Hey everybody, this is Cannaday, and today we're taking a look at a big box scenario expansion for one of my favorite games, Marvel Champions. This is all about Guardians of the Galaxy, Galaxy's Most Wanted. Let's take a look at what comes inside. All right, Marvel Champions, the Galaxy's Most Wanted. So let's see what this comes with. This comes with Rocket Raccoon as a hero here and Groot. So these are two new fully done hero decks, which we'll take a closer look at what's in all of these. And then you have 5 new villains. You have Drang and his band of Badoon. You have Nebula. You have the Collector. And then also another collector scenario here. So there's 2 different versions of the collector here, and we'll talk about what's up and what the differences is with that. And then Ronan the Accuser. I'm not going to go super hardcore through all of the villains. I really love to let people explore these and discover them for themselves, but I'll let you know a little bit of the flavor and feel of how they work. I don't want to show you all the encounter cards and things like that because that can get a bit messy, but let's just jump into it by looking at the heroes. All right, let's take a look here at Rocket Raccoon. He has a recovery of 3. Genius Outlaw, and he has Tinkering, and his action is choose and discard a tech upgrade you control and draw 2 cards, limit once per round. His hand size on alter ego mode here is 6, and then he has 9 hit points for his starting hit points there. Then you have the Rocket Raccoon hero side, 2 thwart, 1 attack, 1 defense, so not super high on the attack or defense, but he does have the 2 thwart there. And then his ability here is Murdered You. Response, after you deal excess damage to an enemy, draw a card. And Rocket's going to be all about doing that excess damage. And of course, on the hero side here, he has 5 hand size. Cool, so that's Rocket. Let's take a look at some of his cards here. There is Cybernetic Skeleton. It is an upgrade that costs 2. This actually straight up gives Rocket plus 3 hit points. So that turns that 9 up to a 12. So you can get that better hit points there. And while in hero form, Rocket Raccoon gets plus 1 attack. So turning that attack into a 2 for him if you have that out. Then Thruster Boots. This is a 1 cost upgrade. While in hero form, Rocket Raccoon gets plus 1 thwart and gains the aerial trait. So yeah. He can have 3 thwart, which seems really good for thwarting once he gets that out. Then this is all, Rocket is all about different tech and weapons and upgrades and things like that. So he has this Rocket's Pistol upgrade, cost 2, restricted, so that means you can only have 2 of these in play at a time. Enters play with 3 charge counters on it. Hero action, exhaust Rocket's Pistol and remove 1 charge counter from it. Deal 2 damage to an enemy. So basically, you exhaust this, you remove a charge counter, and it will deal 2 damage to them. Also, this will be a thing once it runs out that you can discard with the Tinkering action here to draw 2 cards because it is a tech upgrade. And you actually get 2 of those. And then the Rocket Launcher here. This is another restricted. This costs 3. And it enters play with 2 charge counters on it, so you can technically use it twice. Then exhaust Rocket Launcher and remove 1 charge counter from it. Choose a player, or choose a player. Deal 2 damage to the villain and each minion engaged with that player. So you have one of the other players has a ton of minions in front of them, you can use the Rocket Launcher to do 2 damage to all of them. If you have a ton of minions in front of you, you could use it to do 2 damage to all of them. And it's going to deal 2 damage to the villain as well. Then my favorite here is Particle Cannon. Upgrade costs 3, is restricted as well, comes in with 2 charge counters, and there's a hero action, exhaust Particle Cannon and remove 1 charge counter from it. Just like all the other weapons here. You can deal 4 damage to an enemy. This attack gains overkill and ranged. So you're not going to be hurt by retaliate with that ranged. And it has overkill on it and 4 damage. So technically, playing this card for 3 over the course of 2 turns could end up dealing 8 damage. And if there's ways to maybe get more charge counters on it, this card could be even better. Speaking of which, Battery Pack. It is an upgrade that costs 1. It enters play with 2 charge counters on it. You exhaust Battery Pack, and you move a charge counter from this card to another tech upgrade you control. And of course, when this runs out, you can then use Rocket Raccoon's ability to discard it and end up getting 2 cards. So these are going to help you refill your gun. So you come with 2 of those battery packs. So you're going to be able to, when your guns start running low on ammo, you can end up filling them back up so that way they can continue to shoot. Then Reload here. This is an event. It costs 1. Ready a tech upgrade you control. So basically, each of those tech upgrades are going to exhaust when you use them. So say the Particle Cannon here comes with 2 on it. You use it once, it's exhausted. So you did your 4 damage with overkill, and you want to use it again, you play Reload, you unexhaust, and deal 4.
That's very important depending on the situation, especially when you need to deal a lot of damage in one turn. And you actually get 2 of those reloads, so if you combo that just right, you can end up doing a ton of damage. Then Salvage is a resource card here. Not a ton of people come with resources, but this one is super awesome. Salvage response. After you spend this card, and this has a basically a genius and a wild here, or a science and wild, or however you call it. And then after you spin it, you put a tech upgrade from your discard pile on the top of your deck. So you can get your particle cannon or your rocket launcher or a pistol back, that sort of thing. And you can basically put it on the top of your deck, so that way you're going to be drawing into it. And if you timed it just right, maybe you could end up flipping over and drawing it with your thing there by discarding another one. You get 2 of these salvages. Anything that has 2 resources on it is awesome because it lets you play your stuff cheaper. And then a 1-cost event called I've Got a Plan. This is a tactic hero response. After you make a basic thwart with Rocket, so you say, oh, I'm going to thwart for 2, then you can ready Rocket and he gets another +1 thwart until the end of the phase. And then you could then thwart for 3, which is really cool. And you get 2 of those, so that helps you do a little bit of thwarting there. And then Schadenfreude. This is a 2-cost event. Until the end of the turn, heal 2 damage from Rocket Raccoon each time you deal any amount of damage to an enemy. So this sort of thing could be ridiculous. I've definitely used this card several times to heal Rocket Raccoon fully up as I just unload all the different weapons, or maybe you end up using the rocket launcher and dealing a whole bunch of different enemies damage. You can end up healing 2 each time you deal an enemy damage. So hey, your pain is his gain. And then we have Bug Ally here. It is a 2-cost. This guy's pretty interesting because he has 1 of each attack and thwart, and of course he takes his consequential damage. But after your hero makes a basic attack, heal 1 damage from Bug. So you could put him out, attack or thwart with him for 1, and then say Rocket does a basic attack. He's going to heal that 1, so that way he'd be able to attack again next turn without being discarded for only having 2 hit points. This is a guy that would be great if you had ways to plus up his hit points. Then you could like slowly end up healing him back up and being able to attack. He's not going to do a whole lot, but he can stick around, and then occasionally you can use Bug to get swatted by the villain and soak up some damage for you. Well, here is an aggression upgrade that is also a tech weapon. This one is restricted, of course, 3 uses. It works very much like the other guns. When your hero makes a basic attack, exhaust hand cannon, remove 1 charge counter from it. Your hero gets +2 attack for that attack. So you exhaust this, then Rocket Raccoon is going to be attacking for 3 instead of his just normal 1 there. And of course you take off a charge counter from hand cannon. You're going to get 3 of those. And then Looking for Trouble is a 0-cost event. Discard cards from the top of the encounter deck until you discard a minion. Put that minion into play engaged with you, and then you remove 3 threat from the main scheme. So you're going to be pulling a minion out of the deck, which you might be able to combo with some of your overkill and things like that. But you're also going to be removing threat. So if you're really dire on threat, of course this is an aggression deck, so having a little bit more threat removal is pretty good. But pulling a minion out can be so risky. Follow Through. This is a 2-cost upgrade for aggression here. This is a hero interrupt. When your hero would deal any amount of excess damage, increase that damage by 1. Remembering that whenever Rocket Raccoon deals excess damage, you get to draw a card. And this is going to make him do even more excess damage, which is really great for overkill, because then you can push that overkill damage onto the villain. So you actually get 3 of these as well. If you were able to get all of these out, man, that particle cannon would be amazing, being able to do tons of overkill. Then Into the Fray is a 3-cost event. There's another one that would be great with some overkill here. This does 6 damage to a minion. For each point of excess damage dealt by this attack, remove 1 threat from the main scheme. So this is another way for aggression to not only deal damage, but it's also going to be removing threat if you just hit something really hard. Of course, you're going to want to have a minion in play that you can trigger that off of. You get 3 of those. And then Relentless Assault, we've seen this card. Of course, it's deal 5 to a minion. If you paid for it using a combat resource, you can deal overkill. That's in the base set. And then Chase Them Down's in the base set as well. If you defeat somebody, you get to remove 2 threat from a scheme. Then Fauna and Flora, I said that backwards, a 1-cost event. This is Rocket and Groot's team-up card, which you will note that you haven't seen a signature ally for Rocket. So there is no actual signature ally for Rocket Raccoon. We've shown the Bug so far, but here we have the team up with Rocket and Groot, max 1 per deck, place 2 growth counters on Groot, or you can place 2 charge counters on Rocket Raccoon and upgrade and ready him. So even though Rocket doesn't have a signature ally, we do have a neutral ally Groot. So this could be put in any deck, which would be pretty cool. And this will help trigger your Flora and Fauna card here. He's a 3-cost ally with 1 thwart, 2 attack, but he does get 2 consequential damage when he attacks. 6 hit points, that's pretty solid. And the thing that makes it, there's a restriction here. You can only play it if he has a Guardian trait, but the thing that makes it awesome is after Groot defends against an attack, he heals 2 damage. So if you're getting attacks that aren't too damaging and that straight up kill Groot, Groot can end up healing up and being able to come back time and time again to maybe do some more thwarting or maybe doing attacks, which is going to be a little bit more risky. And here's another tech upgrade, but it's a neutral tech upgrade this time. Costs 1, booster boots. Play if your identity is a Guardian trait, max 1 per player. So only Guardians can play that. When you would take any amount of damage from an attack, exhaust booster boots and discard the top card of your deck, prevent 1 of that damage. This is a card that's going to mill your deck a little bit, but it's going to prevent a bunch of damage if you can end up using it properly. So hey, booster boots to dodge out of the way of some damage, end up saving you some hit points there. You get 3 of those. And of course, everybody's seen the strength, energy, and genius that are in so many decks. And then you have the obligation where you can either exhaust him, or you can discard the highest card upgrade you control. If no upgrades were controlled or done this way, you discard the obligation, of course. And then you do have his, basically his nemesis here, Blackjack O'Hare. He has quick strike, so that could be really mean. Also with villainous, so he could jump out of nowhere when that Shadows of the Past comes out and scare you away. And then you guys can discover what's going on with the rest of his card here. All sorts of mean stuff that could mess you up. Well, that's Rocket Raccoon. Let's take a look at Groot next. All right, what we have here is Groot. So this is Groot's alter ego side with 4 recovery, a hand size of 6 and 10 hit points. And then he has an action here called Growth Spurt. Place 2 growth counters on Groot to a maximum of 10. Limit once per round. So what are these growth counters? Groot is all about growth counters, and we'll see how that works here in a second. So Groot, 1 thwart, 2 attack, 3 defense. Pretty nice. And then Flora Colossus, forced interrupt. When Groot would take any amount of damage, remove that many growth counters from him. For each growth counter removed this way, prevent 1 of those damage. So growth counters can help Groot protect from damage, but that's not all growth counters can do. Growth is all about growth counters in all sorts of different ways. So let's take a look at how he works. And of course, hand size of 5 here on hero mode. So one of the things you can do with growth counters here is Lashing Vines. Upgrade, 1 cost. After Groot uses a basic power, remove 2 growth counters from him and exhaust Lashing Vines. Ready Groot. Awesome. We love heroes that have ways to unexhaust and ready. So this is a great card here that can use growth counters to do that. And then Vine Spikes, a 1 cost upgrade as well. Hero Interrupt. When Groot makes a basic attack, remove 1 growth counter from him and exhaust Vine Spikes. Groot gets +2 attack for this attack. So you can get rid of growth counters to up his attack for attacks. And of course that could combo pretty well with Lashing Vines if you're like, okay, I do a basic attack, do the spikes here and give him +2 attack for that attack, and then I'm going to do Lashing Vines to ready him, and then I'm going to do Vine Spikes again, just depending on how many growth counters. You could do a whole bunch of damage. If you were all the way up to 10 growth counters, there's a massive amount of damage you could pull off with that when you're doing 4 damage each time you attack. And then Entangling Vines. Upgrade, this costs 1. This is another superpower here, and this is Hero Interrupt. When Groot makes a basic thwart, remove 1 growth counter from him, exhaust Entangling Vines, and he gets +2 thwart. So very similar to Vine Spikes, but this works for a thwart, so you're able to mess up those schemes of the villain there. And then Vine Shield, a 1 cost upgrade, another superpower here, which you'll see is a little bit important in the future. Hero Interrupt, when Groot defends against an attack, remove 1 growth counter from him and exhaust Vine Shield. Groot gets +3 defense for this attack. So you basically have one that helps each of his stats. If you spend those growth counters for that, instead of just using them for preventing damage, you can boost up the stats. Then Another way to get growth counters here, Fertile Ground. This is a 1-cost support. It is a location, alter ego action, so you have to be in alter ego Groot form, which of course you can get your growth counters there, but you can also use this, exhaust Fertile Ground to place 1 growth counter on Groot to a maximum of 10, and then you draw a card. So this not only helps you get even more growth counters, which of course help with all of his different combos, but also lets you draw a card, which is always amazing in Marvel Champions. Then Root Stomp. This is a hero action. Deal 5 damage to the enemy. If this attack defeats that enemy, place 1 growth counter on Groot. So hey, if you take out a minion or finish off a villain, then you can end up getting another growth counter, and you get 3 of those. So lots of root stomping going on. And then an event here called I Am Groot. And then you deal damage to an equal to the number of growth counters on Groot. So if you're very patient and you build all the way up to your max of 10, this card could do 10 damage to the enemy. Of course, you have to hope the enemy doesn't attack you, because anytime you get hit, you're going to end up taking growth counters off instead of actually doing damage. But that the growth counters going up to 10 kind of does make Groot's hit points, instead of being that 10, can kind of make his hit points seem like he has 20 hit points as a max, as long as you slowly build them up. You get 2 of those I Am Groots to be able to try to smash with his growth counters. And then there's I Am Groot, an event here that costs 3. And this is another superpower. This is a thwart. Remove threat from the scheme equal to the number of growth counters on Groot. So this basically does the same thing as the other I Am Groot. It just works with threat instead. Then We Are Groot. Event cost 1. This is a hero action. Remove 4 growth counters from Groot. Choose that many friendly characters and give those characters a tough status card. This in solo is not nearly as cool as it would be in multiplayer, because you give everybody's hero. But if you have a bunch of allies out, you can maybe give a whole bunch of allies a tough status card, and Groot can help protect everybody. That's awesome. Then another way to get growth counters here. This is, I'm going to say this wrong. Filtration. Event costs 0. Place 2 growth counters on Groot. So 0 cost action just to give you some more growth counters, which you can combo with all your stuff. You get 2 of those. All right, that's all of Groot's card. Groot, of course, is protection here. Here is an ally he comes with, Starhawk. This is a 2-cost ally with 1 thwart, 2 attack with 2 consequential damage on that attack. Pretty rough. But when Starhawk takes damage exactly equal to his remaining hit points, put him back into your hand. And this should work with consequential damage as well. So you could attack 1 turn and then thwart another turn. Then he would exactly have the damage that knocks him out. He would go back to your hand. And then you could play him down again and do that on different turns. You could also try to time it when being attacked by a minion. It'd be harder to do when being attacked by the villain, because of course, you know, the villain's going to have cards that are going to make it a little bit more random how much damage they're going to do to you. But there's another protection character for you to put as an ally in a deck. Then hard to ignore upgrade here for protection. Hero response. After your hero defends an attack and takes no damage, exhaust hard to ignore. Remove 1 threat from the main scheme. So if you're protecting yourself and defending, or if you're removing counters from Groot and not taking damage by doing that, you're going to be not taking damage, and you can end up exhausting this and removing threat from the main scheme. So some more cool upgrades. You get 3 of those. And then Dauntless. Upgrade costs 1. You can only have 1 of these per player. While a hero's remaining hit points are equal to or greater than your hero's starting hit points, your hero gains Retaliate 1. So if you're defending a ton with Groot, or you have tons of counters and the villain's not able to actually deal damage to your starting 10 hit points, you're going to have Retaliate so you can hit the enemies back as they attack you. Awesome. And so you get 3 of those as well. And then Fighting Fit. This is a 2-cost event. This says deal 2 damage to the villain. 5 damage instead if your hero's remaining hit points are equal or greater to your hero's starting hit points. So you can see Groot, not only is he about the growth counters, he's also about keeping the growth counters to keep him healthy so his starting hit points doesn't drop below 10, so he can trigger a bunch of these cool protection cards that he has, allowing him to do extra damage and things like that. Then Desperate Defense. This is an event that we've seen before. It basically buffs up your stuff here, and you can ready your hero if you don't take any damage. And then Indomitable, another card we've seen before. After your hero defends, you can ready your hero. You get 2 of those. And then Power Protection helps you with protection cards. Then Flora and Fauna, which is the same card as the team-up card that is in Rocket's deck. Of course, you have to have the other character in there. You have to have Rocket with Groot to be able to play this. And you will place 2 growth counters on Groot, which you can see is a great thing because growth counters help him out a ton. And you would ready Groot, which would be really cool. Or you can place 2 charge counters on a Rocket Raccoon weapon and ready that upgrade so that way he could shoot his gun again. So this is great. And Groot doesn't have a signature ally, but there is a neutral Rocket now. Rocket's pretty cool. He is a 3-cost ally, 2 thwart, 1 attack. He is a guardian, and you can play only if your identity has a guardian trait. When Rocket Raccoon attacks a minion, he gets +3 attack for that attack. This attack gains overkill. This is amazing because he has 3 hit points. He can do this several times. And the fact that he has 4 attack when attacking a minion seems great, especially if you have puny minions where that damage can spill over to the villain. Or even if you use crazy cards that would help boost Rocket Raccoon's attack in other ways. Man, this is a cool ally. I really like it. And then talking about all of those superpower cards that Groot has, most of his vines are all superpowers and things like that. This is a 1-cost upgrade neutral card here, Def Focus. Then it says max 1 per player. You can exhaust it to reduce the resource cost of the next superpower you control, or the next superpower you play this turn. And there could be all sorts of different superpowers. I know there's a lot of other heroes that have superpower cards, and you can use this to reduce the cost of those cards for a 1-cost upgrade. Pretty great stuff there. And of course, you get 3 of those. And then you have your Genius and Strength and Energy. And then the signature Nemesis here is 2 Scheme, 2 attack, then force response after he attacks. Deal 2 indirect damage to each player. So all about trying to burn off those growth counters, basically. Then Blazing Inferno and lots of things that are going to deal indirect damage to you. So it's all about that. So that's basically how Groot works. So the Guardians of the Galaxy campaign is very similar to the Rise of the Red Skull campaign, but there's some new keywords here as well. Hinder, basically when the card has the Hinder keyword, you place X threat on that card. So if there was like X per player, you would place threat per player, all that sort of thing. Of course, Incite we've seen before. Incite puts threat on the main scheme. Patrol is a new ability here. What Patrol basically does, it's very much like Guard. Guard makes it so you can't attack the villain. Patrol means that you can't thwart the main scheme. So you're not going to be able to remove those things off the main scheme, which could be really dangerous. Of course, we've had permanent cards before that kind of start in play and things like that. Then Piercing is been around for a while, and Range has been around for a while. Piercing gets through toughness. Range makes you ignore Retaliate. Setup means you start with the card in play. Stalwart is a new keyword here. This basically means that you can't be stunned or confused. So if a villain or a hero has Stalwart for any reason, they can't have confused or stun events. And also, if you have those basically conditions and you gain Stalwart, they would fall off of you. And then, of course, Team Up has been around from other sets as well. And then, of course, we have Villainous, which means you draw boost cards for that villain. And now we have Victory X. So there's going to be a bunch of different cards in here that have the Victory X on it as well. Those are mostly going to be for the campaign. So they're going to go to a victory display instead of your discard pile. And then for certain things in the campaign, you're basically going to get credits to be able to buy more cards. That's basically how this victory display works. And then there's a new icon called the Amplify icon. If you see this icon on a thing, this basically adds 1 boost icon to when you see boost icons, which this would be great for somebody like Scarlet Witch who's all about those boost icons. So awesome. So all sorts of different interesting stuff here for the expansion. Of course, this is going to talk to you about how to set everything up for your campaign and things like that. And of course, I love the artwork. I don't want to spoil too much of this for you guys as you go through it. I'm going to try to not do too much of that. Just give you a little bit of a feel of how this stuff plays. All right, so Galaxy's Most Wanted. I love Guardians of the Galaxy as like a Marvel, like part of the Marvel universe. I really enjoy the movies and the comics and things like that. And I just think those characters are kind of zany and wacky. And it'll be super interesting to see them added to the Marvel Champions game. So the first one is Rocket. So Rocket is super interesting. He's all about those tech upgrades and the way they work. And like, since he's aggression, he's built as an aggression deck, and you're trying to figure out how to deal that damage and also figure out how to keep the counters flowing on his different weapons, and it feels like Rocket as he's like throwing a gun out, draw some more cards, grab another gun and take it and try to blast some enemies away. Also he's really good about fighting minions. So if there's a scenario with a bunch of minions, he'll be a lot better in that, because as he's doing overkill to different guys, he's going to be able to draw more cards, allowing him to combo stuff better. I thought it's really cool that he has that exoskeleton card, which pumps his hit points all the way up to 12, and then you end up having extra attack. But it's really cool and interesting trying to figure out exactly which cards you want to play out of his hand and which cards you want to put into play. He does have some stuff that pulls minions out of the deck, and depending on which scenario you're playing, if there's only really big minions in the deck, it could be terrifying to pull minions out of the deck. But against somebody like Ultron or something like that, he'd be able to blast away the tiny little robots and do a ton of overkill to mess up the villain. He'd be great against a villain like that. But yeah, I definitely enjoyed the way Rocket works. I love figuring out how to manage all of his different weapons, because you can only have like 2 of them in play at a time, and sometimes you'll have more in your hand and you're like, okay, I want to shoot this one and then trash that one and play this one out, and the next turn I use it and then reload it and go again, and figuring out how to make those combos work for you is a lot of fun. I also really love that he has a resource card that lets you dig those out of the trash as well. Lots of interesting decisions with Rocket. I can't wait to play him with a bunch of other stuff. I played him through the entire scenario, and whew, it was hard. It was really hard to play him on standard through the base scenario. There were a lot of times when I lost the game, would have to restart and go at it again, and taking out Ronan with him was not an easy task, but I had to just focus directly on damage and get extremely lucky with some of the upgrade cards that I had bought with credits along the campaign. So the next one is Groot. Man, Groot is pretty interesting because the way he works is the fact that he gets all of those different counters, and he just grows bigger and bigger as he's building all of those up. They can soak up a ton of damage with it, but he has a lot of really cool cards that combo with it, being able to boost up his stats and unexhaust him. The fact that you can like give him +2 attack so he swings for 4, then unexhaust him, then give him another 2 attack so he swings for 4, then unexhaust him. You could have maybe some really interesting, crazy turns where his growth counters are a resource for him, and they can be used in a lot of interesting ways. But then you still have all the other resources that would be in your hand of playing out other cards. I love the idea of trying to build him all the way up to 10, so that way when you get the card, I am Groot, to be able to smash people, you can hit somebody for 10 damage potentially with that card, and that card costs a little bit, but then if you have things that make the superpowers cost less and you get that out into play, you can end up playing a bunch of really cool combos with Groot, and I think he's really cool in protection because he's not going to be taking much damage. He can defend stuff if you give him some retaliate, and then are able to combo that stuff all together perfectly. He's a really fun character to play. So I think Groot's going to be great, especially in protection, and the fact that he can give out toughness cards and all sorts of things like that, definitely super interesting. So I'm going to talk broadly about some of the villains. I don't want to do too much spoilers for the campaign, but I definitely want to say this campaign, if you've played Rise of the Red Skull, I want to say that the difficulty in this one feels like it has been upped a decent amount. I've played on standard, and I've played a massive amount of Marvel Champions. I don't want to say I'm an expert at the game because I don't do nearly as much deck building and crazy combos as some people do, but I play the game a lot, so I know how things work. This was a little bit harder to get through, and there was points in it where I'd lose the game and have to restart. It's going to be a lot harder to do if you play that an expert, but man, it ramps up the difficulty, but also makes things interesting in different ways. I really enjoy the way that a lot of the villains feel different and unique. So I'll talk about them a little bit. So there is Drang. Drang is interesting because he just has that ship that just keeps building up those counters and is going to blast you. And it's just trying to figure out how to manage that and be able to prepare yourself for when you're going to take the damage, especially if you don't have a ton of hit points on your characters currently. One thing I will note as well is that both of these heroes don't have a ton of allies in there. They each have 2, and they have 0 signature allies. So finding ways to soak up that damage, Rocket more than Groot, because of course Groot has all of the counters. He doesn't have to worry about it nearly as much. But there can be times when the Band of Badoon jumps out of nowhere and wipes you away with some quick attacks and things like that, and you're like, well, okay, well, that's pretty tough. But this is another interesting encounter, and anything that uses the Milano is super fun, figuring out how to allocate the Milano. Do I use it to scheme? Do I use it to gain resources? I love figuring out those tough decisions. The collectors thing with the first collector that you face off against, he has the whole collection, trying to figure out how to manage the collection. I can really see playing this guy a lot just because it's like interesting decisions, because it's super simple to set up. You put him out, you put the collection out there. He only has 1 scheme card. You're not going to be flipping through different stuff, but you're trying to figure out how to not discard too many cards, and he's going to be discarding cards anyway, and you're like, okay, well now I have to spend resources to minimize that, but also figure out how to take him out, and oh no, he grabbed another card, and we're one away from losing. I was going to be able to do damage to him this turn, but now I'm going to have to spend resources to minimize the collection, and he's just throwing curveballs at you every step of the way. Definitely cool and an interesting way. It just feels like a different way to play a villain in Marvel Champions. And then the other collector as well, I'm throwing the cards on the floor. The other collector as well is also interesting because it's all about just straight up scheming, and you can hit him for damage, but then he's just going to remove some threat from the main scheme, and you have to rush through that main scheme. And there's that interesting choice of, do I take more treachery cards or more encounter cards that are going to mess me up, but it's going to remove like 5 threat. That's an amazing deal, but that card could be a terrible thing that could end up just screwing you up in all sorts of other different ways and add in all sorts of curveballs you weren't thinking about there as well. So I love that this collector also is super unique and feels very different. And as the game goes along, you get the Milano, and then you're able to use that to try to mitigate things and jump around with that as well. And then Nebula is another one that's very interesting with the whole hot potato of the Power Stone, adding that in there. She has all sorts of different techniques, and depending on she basically gets techniques out of the deck at the beginning of the game. So you could end up with a really terrible technique that she's going to use against you at the beginning that's going to kind of hinder your plans. Or you could maybe get a little bit lucky and she doesn't start with techniques, but as she builds those things up, it can mess you up more and more. Nebula is a super interesting one. Also the fact that her ship just keeps ramping up how fast the threat is going on the scheme is another thing that feels unique. And that's one of the things that I have to keep saying about this, is that it feels amazing. It's cool how they have all these different villains that are still playing in different ways that I really enjoy. And the last one, Ronan, another one where you have the Power Stone hot potato thing going back and forth. But with Ronan, you're scared to hold on to the Power Stone. It's cool to have the +1 thwart and +1 attack, but when you have the Power Stone, he's going to be meaner to you. He's going to be more aggressive. He's going to have more boosts. He starts with so many cards in play. You are drawing so many threat cards when you play against Ronan. I feel like Ronan may be the champion for the new hardest villain in the game. I was taking a look at how he looks in the basically expert campaign, and we'll have to see who can win the campaign on expert legitimately without starting over and using all the expert rules, because it is going to ramp up the difficulty for you hardcore. There's tons of icons. There's tons of things that are triggering. The threat is going through the roof faster than you can like blink. And there's lots of things you have to mitigate because you once again have the Milano and you're thinking, do I want to use this for resources? Do I want to use it to reduce threat? Do I want to use it to cancel a threat card? There's all sorts of decisions you have. And that's another thing that's great. Even though he's really hard, he gives you all sorts of interesting decisions as those terrible things are happening. The first time I played against him in Standard, when I played against him with Rocket, I lost on the very first turn. It was just a super misfortunate event. I turned to hero mode, and he attacked me like 3 times in a row based on the threat cards that came out. But that's probably not going to be an uncommon thing, because Ronan is going to be tough. So definitely excited about that. So, overall, Galaxy's Most Wanted. I would not recommend this for people that are brand new to Marvel Champions. If you just have the base set, and you've been playing that a little bit, and you love Guardians of the Galaxy, even if you love them, you could buy this and get the heroes and start playing with them, but the campaigns and the villains feel like they're a little bit more advanced and a little bit more tricky things going on. But if you are a diehard in Marvel Champions and you want more challenge, or you're excited for playing against villains in a different way, this is obviously a no-brainer. This is a new exciting way to play, and the fact that there's the whole new victory display. In the last game at the different points in the campaign for Rise of the Red Skull, you would just be given certain cards. In this one with that whole victory display, you're now going to be picking which cards you want to buy. And that makes for super interesting decisions. Maybe you have a character that's not as good at thwarting. You can buy these cards that are going to do something with thwart and then let you draw a card. So they take up space in your deck, but not really, because when you play them out, they mostly cost 0, and you're going to be drawing more cards, or different ways to upgrade the Milano in different ways. And then just cool aspects like that make the campaign different and interesting. And I feel like the different cards that you can buy with credits are going to be able to shore up your characters in different ways. And by the time you get to Ronan in any mode, when you face off against him, you're going to need a bunch of those cards to be able to take them out, and you're going to need them to come out of your deck at the right time to make it happen. I got super lucky in my second game of it and was able to pull that off, but oh my goodness. And I probably still missed something because there were just threat cards coming at me left and right the entire time. I really enjoy Marvel Champions. I really enjoy the Guardians of the Galaxy, so this is a no-brainer for me, and Galaxy's Most Wanted gives you some of that feel and sets up going into tons more of the Guardians for the entire Marvel Champion stuff. So for me, this is definitely going to get an excellent. I think this is great. If you like Marvel Champions, if you're super big into it, get this box. If you're new to Marvel Champions and you don't have all the rest of the stuff, I would get some of the other stuff so that way you can have decks that you can build to be able to take on the crazy threats that are in this one. So that's my review of Galaxy's Most Wanted. Definitely check it out. Let me know in the comments down below which Guardian you're most excited to play. Do you want to play Rocket or Groot? Are you excited about Drax or Gamora or Star-Lord? There's all sorts of different characters and I'm excited to play them all. But until next time, this has been Roy Cannaday and I'll see you on the next one.